Welcome to Sleepy Journeys Through Time, your sanctuary to learn while you sleep. My name's Jack, and I'm so happy to have you here with me. Tonight, we're going to embark on a gentle journey through the history of teddy bears. Take a slow, deep breath in and let it drift out. We all carry quiet memories of comfort. Moments from childhood, or perhaps from not so long ago. A soft blanket wrapped around your shoulders on a rainy day. The familiar creak of a rocking chair. The scent of something warm baking in the air. And sometimes, comfort comes in the shape of something small. Something held in your hands, or tucked beneath your pillow. A companion that never asks, never judges, and never leaves your side. Just soft, quiet presence. For many of us, that presence had a name and two round ears. A teddy bear. It might have been worn and threadbare from years of love, or brand new and silky, resting gently in a cradle. It might have had a stitched smile, a bow around its neck, or eyes that seemed to shine. But more than anything, it had a place. A place in our arms. A place in our stories. A place in our hearts. The teddy bear is more than a toy. It's a symbol of comfort, of gentleness, of a timeless kind of love that exists in quiet moments. And tonight, we're going to trace the soft footsteps of this beloved companion, through time and across the world. From a curious moment in American history, to sewing rooms in Germany, from bedrooms and bookshops, to hospitals and hidden corners of the world. Along the way, we'll meet bears with stories, some tucked into storybooks, others into attics, all with something quiet to share. So if you have a favorite bear, maybe you can imagine it now. Or if you never had one, imagine what yours might have looked like. What color its fur would be. What name you would have whispered to it before bed. This is your time to rest. Let your body grow heavy. Let your mind float gently with me through history. The story of the teddy bear is soft and surprising. And it begins, not in a nursery, but in the woods. The teddy bear's story begins not in a toy shop, but in the forest of Mississippi, in the year 1902. Theodore Roosevelt was president then, a man known for his big personality and even bigger love of the outdoors. He was strong and energetic, often described as larger than life. Roosevelt believed deeply in nature. He championed national parks, protected forests, and took long expeditions into the wild. But this trip was something different. A hunting trip. He had traveled to Mississippi at the invitation of the state's governor. The goal was to hunt black bears, a popular sport at the time. Guides and dogs were sent ahead to track the animals through the dense woods. But hours passed with no success. Roosevelt, always eager for action, rode deep into the forest on horseback. Still, no bear appeared, until finally his guides cornered one. It was a young black bear, exhausted from the chase, tangled near a watering hole. Rather than allow it to escape, the guides tied it to a tree and summoned the president to take the shot. But Roosevelt refused. He saw the young bear, frightened and defenseless. And though he had no issue with hunting, this didn't feel right. He he lowered his rifle. He wouldn't shoot a captive animal. He ordered that the bear be put down gently to end its suffering, but not by his hand. Word of the event spread quickly, and just a few days later, it appeared in the newspaper. A political cartoonist named Clifford Berryman captured the moment with whimsy and care. In his sketch, Roosevelt stands tall, refusing to shoot a small, wide-eyed bear cub. The bear looked more like a stuffed toy than a real animal. Soft, round, and almost smiling. The image charmed readers. They loved the idea of a powerful man showing kindness to a creature so small. The cartoon ran in papers all over the country. And among those readers were two shopkeepers in Brooklyn, Morris and Rose Michtam. They were immigrants, Morris from Russia, Rose from Romania. They owned a small candy shop, but also sold toys in the front window. One evening, inspired by the cartoon, Rose sewed a small stuffed bear. It had button eyes, soft limbs, and jointed arms that could move. They placed it in the shop window with a handwritten sign, Teddy's Bear. The name was simple and perfect. Customers began to ask about the bear. One person bought it, then another still. The Michtams wrote a letter to the White House, asking permission to use the president's name. Roosevelt, amused and flattered, gave his blessing. And so, the teddy bear was born, not as a toy of battle or adventure, but of mercy, of tenderness, of an unexpected act of kindness in the woods. The Michtams couldn't keep up with demand. They created the ideal novelty and toy company, one of the first major American toy manufacturers. Teddy bears became their signature item. But across the ocean, something similar was already happening. Not as a copy, but by coincidence. In Germany, a woman named Margaret Steiff had begun designing soft toy animals in her small workshop. Margaret had been in a wheelchair most of her life, affected by polio as a child. But her creativity and determination were endless. She crafted elephants and monkeys and lions. And in 1902, her nephew Richard designed a new toy, a soft, jointed bear. It was displayed at the Leipzig Toy Fair in 1903, and an American buyer ordered several thousand. The two creations, Teddy's bear in America and Steiff's bear in Germany, rose together. Parallel beginnings united by something universal. The world didn't know it yet, but something magical had been set in motion. A companion had arrived. For the young, for the old, for the dreamers and the comfort seekers. The teddy bear would soon become more than a passing trend. It would become a symbol, a tradition, a presence in nearly every corner of the world. But its story, this story, starts with one quiet refusal, one moment of gentleness in a forest filled with sound. And from there, the teddy bear began its journey, into hands, into homes, into hearts. The teddy bear's early years were shaped not just by charm, but by craftsmanship, the quiet, careful work of hands stitching meaning into cloth. Let's begin in Germany, in the small town of Giengen an der Brenz, a place of stone streets and sloping rooftops, where, in a modest home, a woman named Margarete Steiff sewed animals from felt and plush. Margaret had faced much in her life. As a child, polio had left her paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors said she wouldn't live long, but Margaret had other plans. With a strong will and a curious mind, she became a seamstress. In 1880, she started a small workshop, creating soft felt elephants as pincushions. But customers bought them not for sewing, but for children. From elephants came donkeys, then monkeys, then lions. And in 1902, her nephew Richard Steiff brought her a new idea. A bear. One that stood upright like a person, with arms and legs that could move. Richard was an artist and toy maker with a love of animals. He spent hours at the zoo, sketching bears in their enclosures, watching how they moved, how they sat, how they played. His designs were full of gentle detail. He imagined a bear made of mohair, soft, lustrous fabric woven from the Angora goat, with jointed limbs that could rotate, and a long, narrow snout like a real bear's. Margaret trusted his vision. She and her workers brought the bear to life. It stood about a foot tall, with little glass eyes, stitched paws, and a sense of quiet dignity. At the 1903 Leipzig Toy Fair, this bear, known as Model 55PB, was placed modestly among the other animals. A curious American buyer noticed it. He ordered 3,000 bears. That single order launched Steiff into international fame. And from there, the teddy bear's future was stitched into the fabric of homes around the world. Meanwhile, in the United States, Morris and Rose Michtom were facing a different kind of demand. Their handmade Teddy's bears were so popular they couldn't sew them fast enough. So they founded the Ideal Novelty and Toy Company, dedicated to producing bears on a larger scale. Early Ideal bears had a sweet, upright posture. Stitched with wool plush, they often wore little ribbons or bows. Their faces were expressive, with shoe-button eyes and stitched noses. Like their German cousins, these American bears were jointed too. Their heads, arms, and legs could pivot gently, making it easier for little hands to pose and cuddle them. They were toys, yes, but also companions, each one slightly different, with a charm all its own. In both countries, bears became more than gifts. They were birthday presents, holiday surprises, and bedtime guardians. Children took them on picnics and tucked them into doll cribs, whispered secrets into their stitched ears. Parents watched as their little ones grew attached, dragging their bears by one arm or setting up tea parties in the garden. And slowly, a tradition began to form. Not just a toy for a moment, but a companion for years. In the earliest years, teddy bears looked a bit different than the ones we know today. They were longer in shape, with pointed snouts and slim torsos. Their arms and legs were narrow, almost lanky, and they were often filled with excelsior, a kind of wood-wool stuffing. This made them firm and structured, less floppy, more statuesque. But even so, there was softness in their presence, a look in the eyes, a curve in the stitched mouth, a posture that suggested they were always listening. As demand for bears grew, so did creativity. Makers began to experiment with fabrics, switching from mohair to wool plush, then to synthetic materials. Colors changed too, from traditional browns and golds to soft creams, silvers, even pinks and blues. And their forms began to shift. Snouts shortened, limbs thickened, bodies became rounder, cuddlier, easier for small arms to embrace. By the 1910s, teddy bears were everywhere, featured in department store catalogs, stacked in toy shop windows, wrapped in paper and ribbons for celebrations big and small. And slowly, new companies joined the growing teddy bear world. In France, England, and Japan, each region added its own flair, different eyes, different stitching, different personalities. But through it all, the teddy bear kept its essence, a symbol of care, of comfort, of the bond between a child and something just their size. Sometimes the bears had names. Sometimes they wore clothes, a tiny jacket, a frilly dress. Sometimes they were stitched entirely by hand. Other times, made on assembly lines humming with rhythm and thread. But always, they were made for holding, for soothing, for keeping close on long nights or rainy afternoons. And so, by the time the 1920s arrived, the teddy bear had gone from novelty to necessity, found in nurseries, schools, and store shelves across the globe. Born of compassion, raised by craftsmanship, and destined to become a timeless part of childhood. As the world stepped into the 1920s, something was changing. There was music in the air, motion in the streets, a rhythm of possibility drifting through the modern age. And in nurseries across the world, teddy bears watched quietly from shelves and pillows, little companions in a decade defined by movement. By now, teddy bears had made their way into many homes. They had become trusted friends to children and sweet gifts between loved ones. But during the 1920s, something more happened. The teddy bear became cultural. Their design began to evolve, no longer just slim and statuesque, as they were in the early 1900s. Teddy bears began to round out, with shorter snouts, fuller tummies, and softer lines. Eyes grew wider, faces more expressive. Arms opened just a bit wider, as if always ready for a hug. New materials made them more affordable and more huggable. Wool, plush, and velvet began to appear, along with stuffed cotton and kapok. Some were machine-made, others still hand-stitched in small batches. By the mid-1920s, teddy bears had become a staple of childhood. They were not just sold, but celebrated. Songs were written about them, soft melodies that played on music boxes and lullaby records. Books featured them as characters, not yet the famous names we know today, but early versions of bear companions with names and personalities. Birthday parties had teddy bear themes. Tea sets were sized just right for furry paws, and every child seemed to have a favorite. Some were pristine and carefully kept. Others had patches, missing eyes, or one ear drooping slightly. But they were all beloved. Then came the 1930s, and the Great Depression. The world slowed. Joy became something people clutched in small, quiet ways. Money was scarce. But even in hardship, teddy bears stayed close. Toy makers had to adapt. luxury fabrics gave way to simpler materials. Manufacturers streamlined designs, making bears with fewer moving parts, fewer pieces to sew. But they didn't lose their soul. Even the simplest bear still carried its comfort, still offered a soft place to rest a cheek. During these years, many teddy bears were homemade. Mothers and grandmothers stitched bears from scraps, old coats, curtains, or well-worn blankets. They filled them with rags or straw and gave them to children as treasures. These bears were not perfect, but their imperfections made them all the more loved. Teddy bears became more than toys. They became symbols of holding on, of getting through. In stories from the era, teddy bears often appear tucked under a child's arm on a long journey, or sitting quietly on a shelf in a one-room schoolhouse, or hidden in the folds of a suitcase as families moved in search of work. They witnessed resilience, held tightly during moments when the world felt unsteady. By the end of the 1930s, the world was changing again. Clouds of conflict were gathering in Europe, and soon World War II would reshape lives across the globe. But even as uncertainty loomed, teddy bears continued to provide something steady. They were packed into trunks headed overseas, given as parting gifts, held by children in air raid shelters and train stations. In England, where evacuation sent thousands of children from cities to countryside, teddy bears traveled too. Some bore tags with names and addresses. Others simply carried a familiar scent of home. They offered silent reassurance that something soft and known could remain, even when the world shifted. Toy makers, even under wartime limitations, continued to craft bears, sometimes with paper tags instead of metal buttons, sometimes using military surplus cloth, olive drab, navy blue. Yet the essence of the bear never changed. Round eyes, quiet face, a shape made for holding. In those decades, teddy bears became woven into the fabric of growing up. From the flapper days of the roaring 20s to the long nights of the war years, they were present. Not loud, not flashy, just there. And for many children, perhaps for you or someone you knew, that bear was more than an object. It was a friend, a witness to dreams and fears alike. So as the world moved into the 1940s, teddy bears stood quietly by, still smiling softly, still ready to be held. The 1940s arrived not with celebration, but with shadow. World War II had begun. For children, the war reshaped the world around them. Fathers and brothers were called away. Cities grew quiet under curfew. Air raid sirens howled through nights that used to be filled with lullabies. And yet, through it all, the teddy bear remained. In bedrooms, in bunkers, and across distant battlefields, teddy bears stood quietly beside those who needed them. Toy makers, like so many industries, were deeply affected by the war. Factories were repurposed. Materials like mohair, wool, and metal were redirected to support military needs. Still, teddy bears continued to appear, made with whatever could be found. Fabrics from old coats, stuffing from pillows, eyes fashioned from buttons or thread. These wartime bears were often simpler, less polished, but no less loved. In England, many children were evacuated from cities to the countryside. They traveled with suitcases, name tags, and, often, a small bear tucked beneath an arm. That bear was more than a comfort. It was a connection to home, a familiar shape when nothing else felt familiar. In underground shelters during bombing raids, children clutched their bears close. The world above might shake and roar, but the bear stayed still, calm. Parents, too, found meaning in these soft companions. Soldiers carried miniature bears in their packs, some stitched by loved ones before they left. Tiny tokens of protection. There are stories, quiet and touching, of bears mailed across oceans, sent from the front lines to a waiting child, or from a mother to her son stationed far away. No words were needed. The message was in the softness, in the shape, in the act of sending love when nothing else could reach. As the war came to an end in 1945, the world let out a long-held breath, and slowly, gently, life began again. In homes scarred by loss, children were born, families were reunited, and teddy bears, once more, found their way into waiting arms. Toy shops reopened. Makers returned to their workbenches. New designs emerged, rounder, softer, more colorful than before. In a world rebuilding itself, there was a hunger for gentleness, for innocence, for the kind of joy a child feels when hugging something just their size. The Steiff Company in Germany resumed production with care and pride. Their signature button in ear bears once again filled shelves around the world. In America, Ideal Toy Company continued to grow. Alongside new brands and creators drawn to the teddy bear's enduring charm. Bears in the 1950s took on new textures. They wore pastel colors, blush pinks, sky blues, buttercream yellows. Their fur was plush and velvety. Their eyes twinkled with glass or gleamed with painted shine. Some played music when wound at the back. Others had stitched smiles and movable heads, each one made with the goal of bringing joy. Teddy bears became popular baby gifts again, welcoming little ones into a world trying to feel safe. They were given at birthdays, tucked into bassinets, and perched on bookshelves beside nursery rhymes. And for parents who had known war, watching their children cuddle something soft brought a kind of healing. In some ways, the teddy bear became a bridge from a past that had seen great hardship to a future filled with hope. The teddy bear of the 1950s symbolized comfort regained. It sat at the edge of a freshly made bed. It traveled in a school bag or watched quietly from a windowsill. It was there for scraped knees, for rainy days, for sleepy afternoons beneath sunlit curtains. And always it asked for nothing, just to be held, just to be there. By the close of the 1950s, teddy bears had not only survived war and hardship, they had flourished. Their design had changed. Their makers had multiplied. But their purpose remained the same: to comfort, to witness, to be there, quiet and constant, as life continued to unfold. By the mid-20th century, the teddy bear had traveled far from its beginnings. From a cartoon in an American newspaper to toy shelves and nightstands all across the world. It journeyed across oceans and borders, not in suitcases or crates alone, but in memories, in stories, in the hearts of those who carried it with them. And in every place it landed, it took on something new, a little accent, a new color, a shape or texture or personality all its own. In the United Kingdom, teddy bears found a home that felt deeply familiar. British bear makers emerged with distinct style and charm. Among them was Merrythought, founded in 1930, nestled in the Shropshire countryside. Their bears had a certain elegance. Made from golden mohair, with slender limbs and hand-stitched smiles. One of their most famous creations was the Cheeky Bear, with a round head, big ears, and a gentle little giggle bell inside. Merrythought bears were given for birthdays, graduations, and royal events. Some were even designed to commemorate coronations and national holidays. And beyond their design, there was a certain British gentleness in the way they sat, as if always ready for tea. Break, time 1.0's, or a quiet chat on a rainy afternoon. In Japan, teddy bears arrived alongside Western toys in the years after World War II, but they soon took on a voice of their own. Japanese artisans and toy designers blended teddy bear forms with a local aesthetic. Soft shapes, large eyes, expressions of innocence and gentle delight. The idea of kawaii, a cultural expression of cuteness, sweetness, and comfort, fit perfectly with the teddy bear's spirit. Bears became smaller, more portable, often pastel or cream-colored. Some wore little outfits. Some came with accessories, tiny tea sets or sleeping caps. And many were adorned with bows, lace, or delicate embroidery. In Japan, bears were not just toys, but gifts of emotion. Tokens of affection exchanged between friends, family, or romantic partners. They whispered a soft message. I care for you. I see you. You are not alone. In South America, the teddy bear took on vibrant hues. Makers in countries like Peru and Colombia used local materials and colorful fabrics. Wool from alpacas and sheep. Bright woven patterns echoing traditional textiles. Bears with sashes, vests, or stitched motifs, inspired by Andean or Amazonian designs. Often made by hand, these bears were sold in markets or gifted in festivals, carrying with them not only softness, but culture. In their quiet expressions were echoes of community and heritage. A bear in South America might tell a story through thread, of a village, a family, a way of life that wove care into every fiber. In Australia and New Zealand, teddy bears became beloved in both urban and rural homes. Craft fairs often featured hand-stitched bears made from homespun wool or soft recycled fabrics. Mothers and grandmothers passed down patterns through generations, adding their own touches. A scarf knitted from leftover yarn, a paw embroidered with initials. Teddy bears in these lands were sometimes rugged, built to withstand outdoor adventures and long journeys in caravans or outback trucks. They were tucked into sleeping bags, perched on the dashboards of camper vans, left with small hands as the sun set over red earth and waving eucalyptus. In Canada, teddy bears wandered through winter wonderlands, often wrapped in plaid scarves or stitched from flannel. They were found beneath pine trees at Christmas, or warming a child's lap beside a fire. No matter the continent, no matter the language, the teddy bear's meaning remained beautifully consistent. It was always there for one thing: to be held, to be cherished, to be a soft constant in a world of change. Makers across the globe embraced the bear's basic form, but let their imaginations shape the details. Each version became a mirror of its culture, an offering of care, made in its own image. Some bears came from factories, others from kitchen tables and hand-me-down sewing kits. Some wore uniforms, some wore nothing but time, their fur matted from years of love. They lived in tree houses, temples, and taxis, on high-rise apartment balconies and country porches, in city schools and village clinics. Each one quietly present, each one quietly loved. And so the teddy bear, born of kindness, raised by hands on every continent, became not just a toy, but a global companion. No matter its name, no matter its color or stitching, a teddy bear always says the same thing: you're safe, you're loved, I'm here. Over time, teddy bears stepped out of bedrooms and into stories, out of cribs and into books, onto pages filled with adventures, questions, and quiet wonders. And once there, they never left. Teddy bears became not just companions to children, but characters in their own right, gentle guides through the world of imagination. One of the most beloved of all is a bear of very little brain, but a great, great heart. Winnie the Pooh, created by A. Milne in the 1920s. Inspired by his son Christopher Robin and a stuffed bear he adored. Pooh lives in the 100-acre wood, with friends who worry, laugh, wander, and wonder. Piglet, timid but brave. Eeyore, gloomy but loved. Tigger, bouncing with joy. And at the center, Pooh Bear, soft, slow, and endlessly kind. He hums little songs, gets stuck in doorways, thinks deeply about honey and friendship. The stories aren't loud. There are no villains, just soft lessons about being yourself and being together. Pooh's words are gentle truths. Sometimes the smallest things take up the most room in your heart. I wasn't going to eat it. I was just going to taste it. He's the kind of friend who listens, who stays, who doesn't mind silence. Just like the teddy bears who inspired him. Then there's Paddington, a polite little bear from darkest Peru who found himself at a London train station, wearing a tag that read, "Please look after this bear. Thank you." Created by Michael Bond in the 1950s, Paddington Bear is full of wonder, curious about everything, endearingly clumsy, always trying his best. He loves marmalade sandwiches, carries them under his hat just in case. Paddington reminds us how kindness can travel, how strangers can become family, and how even a small bear with a big heart can make a difference. Then there's Corduroy, a bear in green overalls who lives on a department store shelf. In Don Freeman's 1968 story, Corduroy notices he's missing a button. He believes he's not perfect enough to be chosen, So one night, he sets off in search of it. He climbs, he explores, he dreams. And though he never finds the button, a little girl named Lisa finds him. She doesn't mind the missing piece. She sees the bear behind the thread. Corduroy's story is about being chosen, just as you are, and the quiet joy of belonging. These bears, Pooh, Paddington, Corduroy, they don't roar or chase or conquer. They listen. They wonder. They love. And in that way, they reflect the real teddy bears sitting quietly in bedrooms across the world. Bears have appeared in other ways too. In television, advertising, and animated stories. Snuggly mascots. Characters on cereal boxes or bedtime shows. Soft, round faces that beam reassurance through the screen. There's something about their presence. That shape. Those eyes. The way they sit so still. Even without movement, they communicate so much. Safety. Warmth. That everything is okay. Teddy bears have even found their way into songs. The Teddy Bear's Picnic, written in the early 1900s, still hums through childhood. If you go down to the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise. The song captures the magic of secret worlds, the ones children imagine just before sleep, where bears dance and laugh and gather in joy. Over decades, each generation has found its own bear. In books, in shows, on store shelves and library pages. But no matter how they appear, in corduroy overalls, a duffel coat, or a red shirt too small for a round tummy, they carry the same message. You are enough. You are loved. You have a place here. And perhaps as we read these stories by lamplight or whisper them before bed, we're reminded of our own teddy bears and the way they've quietly told us those things all along. Some teddy bears are tucked away in attics. Some rest on shelves behind glass. And some sit proudly on pillows, still loved after many, many years. There's something about the teddy bear that invites not just affection, but devotion. And for many people around the world, that devotion becomes collecting. Not every collection begins with a price tag. Some begin with a single childhood bear, fur faded from years of bedtime hugs, an ear sewn back in place, a name whispered like a secret. That bear becomes a beginning, a thread leading backward in time. Collectors are drawn to teddy bears for many reasons. Some love the artistry, the way mohair shines under lamplight, the hand-stitched paws and carefully turned joints. Some love the history, each bear a glimpse into another era. And some simply feel a connection, a sense that certain bears hold stories, even if no one remembers exactly what they are. Among the most treasured are early bears made by Steiff in Germany. Their button and ear tag is a mark of authenticity, stitched with care and history. The earliest models from the 1900s and 1910s have long limbs, humped backs, and shoe button eyes. They are firm to the touch, filled with wood wool or kapok, and many have worn beautifully, fur rubbed thin by love and time. In the United States, early bears from the Ideal Toy Company are especially prized. Their slightly more rounded faces and shorter muzzles became the blueprint for generations to come. Collectors search for them in estate sales, vintage shops, and quiet corners of the past. British-made bears from Merrythought, especially those crafted mid-century, are also beloved. Each one seems to carry a bit of British charm, refined but warm, tidy but huggable. Some bears are rare because of how few were made. Limited editions, artist-created bears, or bears made during war years with unusual materials. Others are rare because they've survived so long. Their stuffing, still intact. Their stitching, still strong. One of the most famous collectible bears in the world is Teddy Girl, a cinnamon-colored stiff bear born in 1904. She belonged to Colonel Bob Henderson, who took her everywhere, even through World War II. He said she brought him luck. When Teddy Girl was sold at auction in the 1990s, she fetched a record-breaking price. Not just for her age or condition, but for the life she had lived. Other bears have appeared in museums, featured in books, or passed between generations as quiet treasures. Some wear tiny tags around their necks. Others are wrapped in tissue, opened only on special days. But for many collectors, the greatest value isn't found in auctions or rarity. It's found in memory, in the way a bear feels in your hands. Familiar, even if you've never held it before. There are bears whose fur is worn bare in one spot, right where a thumb rested night after night. Bears with stuffing pressed down from thousands of gentle squeezes. These are not perfect bears, but they are deeply, wonderfully loved. Collectors often speak of the feeling they get when they see the one, a quiet knowing, like finding an old friend you didn't know you missed. There's something timeless about it, as if the bear has been waiting, very patiently, to come home. Some families pass bears down through generations, from grandparent to parent to child, not always as collectibles, but as keepers of memory. These heirloom bears might sit quietly in nurseries, or be brought out for bedtime stories, their ears listened with for decades. Whether gathered behind glass or nestled in blankets, teddy bears in collections are more than objects. They are keepers of time, of comfort, of continuity. And always, they are waiting, soft, steady, and still, for the next hand to hold them. Even now, in our fast and glowing world, teddy bears remain close, quiet companions in bedrooms, hospitals, and waiting rooms. They are still given as gifts, to new babies wrapped in pastel ribbons, to children on birthdays nestled in bright boxes, to graduates and friends with notes tied to one paw. Sometimes they arrive for no reason at all, just a way to say, I'm thinking of you. I love you. Here's something to hold when I can't be there. Stores still carry rows of bears, soft, round, and waiting. Some with stitched hearts on their chests. Some with scarves, hats, or names already chosen. But not all bears are bought. Some are sewn by hand, made with scraps of fabric from clothes once worn by someone dear. Memory bears, stitched with care. They're given in moments of both joy and sorrow, to honor a loved one, to comfort a grieving heart. Teddy bears are also found in places of healing. In children's hospitals, a soft bear might wait on the bed, or be tucked under a little arm as monitors beep gently nearby. They're used in therapy rooms too, to help a child express feelings they can't quite name, to serve as a safe presence during difficult conversations. In emergency response work, teddy bears are packed into kits, given to children at the scene of accidents or after trauma. A soft grounding object in a moment of chaos. Sometimes it's the first thing they hold after something scary, and the last thing they hug before sleep finally returns. Organizations and volunteers donate bears by the thousands each year to shelters, hospices, community centers. Each bear is more than a gift. It is a message wrapped in softness. A reminder, you are not alone. In a world filled with beeping screens and busy noise, the teddy bear remains still, present, patient. It doesn't need batteries or updates. It doesn't ask questions. It simply stays, soft and steady. And in that way, it continues to do what it always has: to comfort, to hold space, to offer love, one quiet hug at a time. The teddy bear's story is long, but it has never hurried. It moves quietly, softly, from arms to shelves, from hands to hearts. From a moment in the woods with a kind-hearted president, to sewing rooms in Germany and candy shops in Brooklyn. From nurseries to hospitals, book pages to display cases. Its journey has been gentle. And through it all, the teddy bear has always been the same at heart. A presence, a comfort, a place to rest your worries. Perhaps you had a bear once, or still do. Perhaps it sat on your bed each night, or traveled with you on long car rides. Maybe it had a name, or maybe it didn't need one. It was simply your bear. If you close your eyes now, can you picture it? The texture of its fur, the way it fit beneath your arm, the small sound it made when hugged. Or if you never had one, imagine the bear that would have suited you best. Its color, its size, what kind of comfort it would have offered, just by being there. Let that feeling settle into your chest, soft and warm, like a memory made of cotton and thread. Let your breath slow. Let your body grow heavier. There's nothing else you need to do. Just rest now, wrapped in softness, held by the gentle story of a bear who's always been near. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey. I hope it brought you a little peace, a little wonder, and a little closer to rest. Until next time, sweet dreams.